So the update's finally out, bringing a few new changes and pieces of content with it, but the most important of which is that we get our hands on the Smoking Hot Chef's Ultimate version. This Wish.com looking Jace from Arcane right here comes with 2 new Transcendence mods, changing up his playstyle drastically, and so far, they're pretty good. One's more ideal for general mobbing, while the other spams fireballs from his wrist like Vegeta finding himself in a pickle. So in today's video, we'll be taking a look at my current recommended 3 loadouts for Ultimate Blair, covering all things Arche Tuning, Reactors, gear, playstyle, and everything else that you may need to know. As always, we got a lot to cover, so if all that sounds good to you, then let's get to it. So kicking ourselves off, we are going to be looking at the Meatballs build first, and this is going to be involving Killer Recipe. Now, this one essentially does a couple of things to be able to change most of his kit, but the main thing to be able to take away from this is now the passive doesn't require any kind of setup. Instead, you gain both the Extinguish and original passives from hitting an enemy when they have been applied with Burn. Now, Chef's Touch is also granted when attacking or defeating enemies with Burn at a 50% rate, and this does stack up to 10 max and is primarily used with your skill 2 to be able to gain up to 50% of your max MP bar instantly. So this means that it does work fantastically with the Slayer set, for example, to be able to maximize your DPS and not have to worry about that skill cost. Now, due to things like long cooldowns, especially on your skill 1, which are going to be your Meatballs, we do want to be able to try and hit that 90% skill cooldown cap, so we do use things like Multi-Talented here, as it is Dimension, and it allows us to be able to get that skill cooldown of 20.5% right there for 5 seconds. So when it comes to the build, we are primarily building into cooldown. We are going into crit, because once again, Blair is fantastic when it comes to crit. We want a little bit of HP, a little bit of range, a little bit of duration, and the duration is going to be helping us in terms of how many Meatballs that we can cast out with our ability. So we do go for Focus on Fire, we are going into Nimble Fingers and MP Conversion, as well as Multi-Talented, allowing us to be able to hit that skill cooldown cap. When it comes to critical hit mods, we are going for Emergency Measures, Skill Concentration, and Frontlines. This allows us to be able to get up to that 100% critical hit rate, especially with everything to do with his passive, and it also allows us to be able to maximize out on that critical hit damage side of things. We are going for Skill Extension to be able to chuck out a few extra Meatballs with our skill 1. We are going for Skill Expansion. This allows us to be able to do even more kind of range damage when they are skill 3 as well as our skill 1, meaning that we now have some quite nice splash damage when it comes to the Meatball side of things. And then lastly, just wrapping it all up, we have an increased HP mod so that we can actually take a few hits while we're out in the field. Now swapping on over to build number 2, this is going to be involving Next Level Recipe, and this is going to be the fast moving side of things when it comes to the mobbing for Blair. Now this changes our skill 1 as well as our skill 3, and skill 3 now changes into Hot Delivery instead of Burn Taste. This one is much better in terms of like on the grand scheme of things. This allows us to be able to do even more damage than what Burn Taste was doing in the first place, so we're off to a great start. But on top of that, this allows us to be able to do it out in a fan, allowing us to be able to affect a wide range in front of us rather than just being able to direct it in a small cone. On top of that, being able to increase the amount of range that we do have allows us to be able to go up in certain levels. So by increasing our range by 100%, that allows us to be able to hit to level 3, and allows us to be able to affect 9 meters by 6 meters, so we're affecting the most amount of enemies as possible. Now this can be done in a few ways, but we are going to be grabbing one specific range mod when it comes to this, so we are going for Skill Expansion, and the rest will be handled by the rest of the build. Now when it comes to skill 1, this one does have a few things going for it, but there's a few things to kind of like discuss. But the main kind of thing that happens with this is that it applies a buff to yourself. This allows you to be able to, every single time you travel 7 meters, this does not have to be on the ground, so you can use this in combination with like mid-air maneuvering to be able to move like laterally, vertically, anything like that. Every time you move any kind of direction of 7 meters, you will be applying a flame zone directly underneath you, and these can absolutely stack the exact same way that normal Blair was able to in the first place, and this happens for 7 meters. Now one thing to note with this is that one single cast of this will allow you to be able to place up to 5 flame zones. If you activate this before the duration, so if you reset this before the duration is fully finished, this will still only account for 5 pulls, so you will just constantly be placing that. So the new one that you start placing down will replace the old pull, and you'll just constantly have a trail of fire behind you. Now if you do cast this again after that duration is finished, so after the buff has dissipated, you can absolutely go up to 10 flame zones with this. So the trick with this one is that you kind of want to keep an eye as to when the buff is going to dissipate, and then being able to activate it once again to get even more flame zones, so you're going to be affecting more of a wide area. Now this doesn't get affected by what your Deadly Cuisine is going to be doing, because this is also going to be putting another 3 zones out, so you can absolutely get up to 13 zones quite nice and easily with this kind of setup, but it's just worth keeping in mind as to why your flame zones are dissipating. It's going to be because you're not keeping an eye as to when this duration is finished, and then you're going to be activating it before then. Now in terms of the modules, we have changed a couple of things from the Meatball side of things. The main thing is because we are going to be relying on the flame zones to do even more damage, we want to go into modifier. We do this by going into focus on dimension to be able to make up for the fact that we do not have multi-talented to be able to help us out with the cooldown, but this is going to be more than enough considering that we can have 100% uptime on hot delivery, as well as being able to reduce the cooldown even further on merciless cuisine is not needed because we kind of want to be able to expire that duration. So we do go for focus on fire, focus on dimension to maximize our damage. We've gone for the crit modules once again. We've gone for skill extension to give ourselves a little bit of a duration. We have gone for range, and we've also gone for the cooldown combination of nimble fingers and MP conversion and increased HP just to make sure that we can survive a couple of hits. Lastly, the third build is going to be a retakers to the build that I did put out last week, and this is going to be the ones in just in case you do not have the red transcendence mods, so the killer recipe and the next level recipe. So if you do want to be able to level up Ultimate Blair but you don't have access to those mods just yet, then you absolutely can get away with being able to use this build, and this will be able to carry yourselves all the way up until you've got him fully catalyzed. A lot of these modules also stay the same in terms of like slots and everything like that, so it's also a great place to be able to start. The main thing to take away here is that we do use Veterans Tactics because we are looking to be able to spam Deadly Cuisine as much as possible, because this is going to be putting out 5 flame zones all at the same time, and every single 5 seconds means that we can trigger Veterans Tactics to reset this and allow it to be able to chuck out another 5 on top of what you're going to be putting out with your skill 1. So we are going to be essentially littering the battlefield with flame zones, and this allows us to be able to increase the amount of damage that we can do with those skills. So we've wrapped up everything to do with the module side of things. Let's start talking about reactors. So when it comes to this, because every single time, it doesn't matter what transcendence mod you go for, these main damaging abilities are going to be dimension, so we absolutely want to go for a fire dimension, so that's going to be a burning phase reactor. And when it comes to the mounting, it doesn't really matter too much. We'll talk a little bit more about it when we get to the weaponry side of things, but to be fair, you can absolutely have almost anything in this section right here. Just keep in mind, I will go through a couple of tips when we go to the weaponry section. When it comes to the rolls at the bottom though, I would recommend going into skill critical hit damage and either a dimension or a fire skill power boost ratio. This allows you to be able to maximize the amount of DPS that you can chuck out, and this is probably going to be the best way to be able to actually do so. If you could go for a cooldown, this would be a tiny bit of a waste considering we are going to be using multi-talented for a for example with skill for our build 1, and we also have Veterans Tactics on our build 3, so technically cooldown isn't needed as much, so it does make more sense to go into more DPS in this case, and that is one of the reason why I've actually gone for these kind of roles over that of a cooldown. So swapping on over to the component side of things, we did have the brand new 4-piece of the Firebrand set get dropped, and while it sounded good on paper, the minus 30% to enemies fire resistance isn't fantastic. It's not going to be giving you more DPS as compared to a couple of the sections that we're going to be going for. At least that's what I've heard out and about in the community. It seems it's a little bit of a disappointment. Now the 2-piece is pretty good and probably will be used on a couple of builds, but as it currently stands, the 4-piece is just not worth it. So that means we are going to be left with the tried and tested. That is going to be a 4-piece of Slayer. Once again, we can mitigate the skill cost by going into everything that Blair is able to do in terms of regenning most of his MP, so it's not going to be that much of a defining factor, and we absolutely can benefit from that extra skill power. Alternatively though, if you are going for the next level recipe side of things, you can use that set, or you can go for a 2-piece into Hunter, as well as a 2-piece into the Volcanic set. That is going to be giving you fire skill power, as well as being able to give you that extra cooldown, because your skill 3 does have a 0.5 second difference between when it finishes its animation and when it's back off cooldown. So if you do go for that set, it will allow you to be able to have that 100% uptime. It's up to you as to if that 0.5 seconds actually makes a difference to yourself. So now we're on to the weaponry side of things, and I did say I would talk a little bit more about it. Now, when it comes to dimension-based characters, when it comes to skills, we don't really have anything as fantastic when it comes to like a stat stick that you can hold in your hands and just really kind of get some benefit from. Now, technically, Peacemaker does, but unfortunately that is not attribute only, so it's not going to be benefiting Blair in any kind of capacity. The only other one is Secret Garden. Now, Secret Garden is the one that I've kind of gone for. The reason why is because I already have this set up as a stat stick for other characters. So when it comes to like sprint speed and things like that, I've already got that nice quality of life built in, but the unique ability does have something to help us out with dimension, but it's only going to be recovering custom resource. Now, we don't need any help when it comes to Chef's Touch, so this isn't really going to be coming into it really like too much, so it's just not not worth it for that side. But what we can do is it does have some fantastic core rolls, allowing us to be able to go into sprint speed as well as grapple hook charge time, which is going to be helping us out with the majority of the builds that we do have. So the faster we can go, the better, and that allows us to be able to help us out with the mobbing side of things, and just opens up Blair to be a more usable character in a bunch of different activities. So that is going to be the one I would recommend, but to be fair, you can replace this with any stat stick weapon that you do have. So if you have got set up Peacemaker or something like that, you could swap that in instead, as long as it does match the mounting as to what your reactor is showing. Now, Arche Tuning wise, we are still rocking the exact same loadout as what we were doing the previous week. Ideally, if you do need the skill cooldown side of things, this is going to be the route I would recommend taking. You do want a little bit of sustain right here, but primarily you want to be able to pick up things like skill power, cooldown, skill power, being able to go for extra range, extra damage, head up to the top to be able to get the duration up, critical hit rate, critical hit damage, as well as that cooldown node. Now, if you do not need the cooldown, because you can see that if you get to 70% skill cooldown and then multi-talented is triggering, and you do not, so that for that point another 5.5% skill cooldown is going to be a waste, then you can absolutely go for this route instead, and this allows you to be able to get even more MP back. It allows you to be able to get a little bit more sustain. It allows you to be able to still hit quite hard, but it gives you a little bit more quality of life in terms of like the extra MP, as well as being able to get all these kind of nice goodies that exist around the center. And then wrapping it all up, we have the Inversion Reinforcement. Now, the three that I'm going to be recommending to yourselves are going to be these three right here. I'm going to recommend any of the focus rounds, because if you ever need to fall back on shooting, you can absolutely apply the enhanced focus rounds, and that allows you to be able to shred some resistance just for free, just from shooting your gun. On top of that, we also have selective neurostimulation. This could be replaced with selective cellular, depending on if you need extra HP or if you need extra MP. Feel free to be able to go back and forth as to which one you find you need. For example, with the Meatballs, you probably don't need the extra MP, so you could go for that one just to be able to give you a chance of being able to stay alive and in the fight. And then lastly, the biodensity augmentation is probably going to be the one that I would recommend. This allows you to be able to get some extra HP, so you do have a little bit more sustain. So there's a few capstones that are going to be helping you out in terms of damage. We do have Area Burst Inducer, which is going to be applying incoming damage modifiers, and we also have Quantum Domain, which is going to be helping you out with range as well as skill power as you start spamming some of your skills. So we do have some really nice stuff that's going to be helping us here. And with all that out of the way, that wraps it up for my breakdown of Ultimate Blair's new builds. I've always been a fan of Blair, as the guy just screamed having cool looking abilities. Like, who doesn't love shooting flames from their hands or throwing big fireballs at their enemies? But the way his red mods now change his playstyle is fantastic, and honestly, I just wish that we'd had these options sooner. It's got easier setup and mobbing potential with his next level recipe, or you're going for better burst damage with his killer recipe Meatballs. There really is a build for anyone or any situation right here. And this is the section I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the latest update? Will you be farming for Ultimate Blair soon? And lastly, which Descendant do you want to see get a new build guide on next? Let me know all that and more down below. Massive thank you for making your way to the end of the video. As I always say, keep yourselves safe, keep yourselves well. I'll see you all on the next video.